Hawaii's Attorney General. Marijuana legalization bill formally lands in state legislature, but advocates urge major reform. A marijuana legalization measure unveiled in draft form last year by Hawaii's Attorney General has now been formally introduced into the legislature, with companion bills filed in both House and Senate. Advocates, however, say the latest version needs major changes to shift the plan's focus away from law enforcement and to allow for the clearing of past cannabis convictions to provide relief for those most harmed by prohibition. Led by Representative David Tarnas in the House and Senator Jarrett Iokale in the Senate, the bill is largely the product of Attorney General Ann Lopez and her staff. During a confirmation hearing last April, she committed to leading an administrative task force between now and next legislative session to develop a complete regulatory and law enforcement legislative package that you can attach to any bill if you're planning to legalize marijuana, a commitment that led to new bills, HB 2600 and SB 3335. Momentum to legalize cannabis has been building in Hawaii for years, and earlier this month, the Senate's majority Democratic leadership listed the reform as one of its top legislative priorities for the current session. The chamber passed marijuana legalization bills in 2021 and 2023 that later stalled in the House of Representatives. The new 328-page bill landed with notable support last week, with 9 other co-sponsors besides Kia Kohole in the Senate and 16 others aside from Tarnas in the House. But the advocacy community, the measure has been met with mixed reviews. Generally speaking, the bill provides a sound floor plan for adult use legalization, but erects a structure that is still far too punitive in its approach, said Nikos Leverens of the Drug Policy Forum in Hawaii and the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center. I told Marijuana Moment in an email this week, placing a velvet glove of legalization on law enforcement's iron hand is not what is called for. As introduced, the proposal would allow adults 21 and older to possess up to an ounce of cannabis and up to 5 grams of concentrate as of January 1st, 2026. Home cultivation would be legal, with adults allowed to grow up to 6 plants and keep as much as 10 ounces of resulting marijuana. Now, you know that doesn't make sense because one plant is going to produce more than 10 ounces. So how are you going to get people in trouble that way? By giving them the means of production that allows for greater than the amount of possession. Nice try. The measure would create the Hawaii Cannabis Authority to license and regulate adult use cannabis businesses. The body would be overseen by a 5-member appointed cannabis control board led by an executive director who would be vetted better than our friend in Missouri, who would need to have experience in public health or cannabis regulation. Cultivators, processors, medical dispensaries, adult use retailers, craft dispensaries, and independent testing laboratories would be licensed under the plan, with regulators able to adopt rules around special events, social consumption, and other special use cases. Adult use cannabis would be taxed at a relatively modest 10% in addition to Hawaii's 4% general state excise tax. Advocates, however, are criticizing the bill for what they say is an overly strict approach to the change, pointing to new criminal laws that would affect minors as well as restrictions that could risk perpetuating the harms of the drug war, such as the bill's explicit assertion that the smell of marijuana can be used to justify searches. Karen O'Keefe, director of the State Policies for Marijuana Policy Project, which recently released a summary of the new legislation, said the bill, as introduced, might actually do more harm than good to the cause of cannabis justice. Legalization should mean fewer cannabis arrests, not more, O'Keefe told Marijuana Moment, arguing that the policy change should include the clearing of criminal records for cannabis and reinvestment in hard-hit communities. Instead, these bills ramp up cannabis-specific law enforcement and impose jail times for innocuous behavior that harms no one, including driving long after impairment wears off and having previously opened jars of edibles in the passenger area of a car. Anyone who possesses an open package of marijuana or loose flower in the passenger area of a vehicle, for example, could face up to 30 days in jail. Minors could be hit with criminal charges, though the bill includes provisions for probation and deferred prosecution. And convictions would be eligible for expungement once sentences are complete. Oh, thank you so much, Hawaii. Broader expungement provisions for people with existing marijuana convictions on their record, however, don't exist in the bill drafted by Lopez's office. The current plan would create a cannabis enforcement unit as well as a separate drug nuisance abatement unit within the Attorney General's office, with at least 25 new positions between the group. That's why Lopez drafted the bill, so she could build her team. A new cannabis enforcement special fund and nuisance abatement fund would receive 7.5% of the marijuana tax revenue. Follow the money. While it's past time Hawaii end cannabis prohibition, O'Keefe said the legislature needs to specifically revise the AG drafted bill. So there's a few more paragraphs in this, but let's just jump right into it because we've covered this already, and we've covered this Attorney General here on High at Night News. I'm going to kick this off and then give my other panelists an opportunity to riff, ramble, and rant with me. So this Attorney General initially had said that she was neutral on medical cannabis. That's a challenge for me since the science would lead me to believe that anybody who is intelligent and sentient and has an open mind wouldn't stay neutral on something where a lot of the data is already in place to support a pro-medical position. And I just think that anybody who drafts a bill that adds 25 people to their office is really thinking about their political career and consolidating strength and influence in government. And then this notion that you could do 30 days in jail for having an open package of edibles in your car, even if you were stone cold sober, seems like while we want to see something advance, they need to get it right, and they need to get it right in such a way that it doesn't create additional criminality that, in my opinion, shouldn't exist. This is Yaro Kubrin, High at 9 News. I'd like to hear what the rest of my guests and panelists think.
It's sad to see the pace of progress on cannabis in Hawaii. And I don't know, last time I asked this, I don't know if anybody else has any updates or anything, but there were no actual Hawaiian owned operations out there.
Yeah, I think that is correct. I think that is very, very correct. There is no indigenous representation in regards to ownership of any of these places out there.
It's bureaucracies, guys. These bureaucracies, once they're funded, never want to give up funding. And if you don't get funding and keep your bureaucracy going, then you're out and somebody else is in. And inside law enforcement, there still is this deep-seated belief that marijuana is going to ruin society. And you see it sneak out in things like this, where you can't really explain why this is such horse shit and doesn't fit together, except that we don't think this is good for society, so we'll take one little baby step at a time, rather than, like California, the voters said, it's a misdemeanor soaking wet. Law enforcement, deal with it. You know, you have to go around the politicians to get this done. Because if you let them do that, they're going to continue to criminalize because their mama told them weed's bad, and by God, I'm going to keep something on the book so we can do something to these. It's like, stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I kind of liked about this story is that you see them starting to say some of the quiet parts out loud, right? Creation of this new drug nuisance abatement task force, or whatever the fuck they called it, however they're finding way to divert money from one form of law enforcement to another. You know, like that to me is saying that quiet part that, like, for them, this is about money and power and maintaining a certain level of influence. The other thing I really liked, obviously I don't like it, but I think it's hilarious that they said it out loud, is they explicitly maintain the right to use the smell of cannabis to establish probable cause, which is what we've been screaming for a long time. Like, all right, thank you. Like, that's what we've been saying. Like, you're proving our point by adding this into your legalization bill.
Exactly.
I could not have said it better than you just did.